Once again, welcome back for the culture. Brought to you by JCTV. We are we're back again with our Black History Month series. I know we kicked it off a couple of days ago, and I told you I've been hard at work recording. I'm banking up a couple of them just so as I do other for the culture content, and as I do some more. Okay, let's talk about sports. I don't want to. I want to make sure this month is impactful, and I put the focus and the care and the time and the just intent behind the Black History Month series that it needs to have. I want to make sure it's important. It's not just something to do. It's not just for content, and it is for a purpose. And I think today was one of those. You know how a lot of times you have something happen, um, and you think you're doing the right thing, you hope you're doing the right thing, you think you're on the right track, and then you get some confirmation. But before I get into that, let me ask you again. Appreciate you joining. Appreciate you tuning in. I ask you to subscribe. I ask you to hit that like button. Ask you to comment, interact with me, and share with everybody else and spread the word. I told everybody back when I first started this that I wouldn't ask for the subscriptions unless really was giving you something to come back for. I really feel like I've gotten to that place to where you can see the evolution. I'm learning and just growing, and I think giving really good information and really good content. So it's been growing organically. I appreciate that, and it's been growing at a slow but steady pace. And like I said, I hope you can see the growth and the evolution like I can, and just take the ride with me. Just be one of those people that got in early and tell everybody else that you've been there for a long time. But back to the Black History Month series and the confirmation that I received. I was already working on, because as we talked about, I mentioned in the first episode, being able to take what people have fought for. I talked about it last night in the show with Tron. Just being able to be appreciative of people who come before us, our ancestors, the work that they've done, the blood, sweat, and tears, their lives, everything that they gave for us to have what we have, to be who we are, to do what we do, to be able to pay that forward. One important thing that I have, and this again back to the confirmation when I said I'm gonna get to where the confirmation came from. Um, with our history, when you talk about Black history, I think I don't think, I know there's a misconception that our history starts after slavery. It starts with civil rights and with Jim Crow and with that period of time. And I think that's by, and again, I don't think that's by its intent, because when you do that, you make us, and the goal is to make everyone who fits in our category, our culture, our culture, in the box that we're in, our race, we as Black people, to make us feel like we're at a certain place because we're overcoming slavery, because that's where we're started. That's the starting line that people are trying to put us at. That's not our starting line. That's not our complete history. That's not exactly where we come from. It's part of our history. It's an important part of our history, but that's not the total part of our history. And because before that, we came here, a lot of us, most of us are descendants of slaves. And not and but where we come from is important, and who we were before we were brought here or sent here, brought here, sent here, arrived here. Who we were is very, very important to that story. And we were kings, we were queens, we had empires, dynasties. We ruled, like we had all those things they talk about with Rome, with Greece, Macedonia, all these great empires. We had that too, but no one talks about it, because that impacts our sense of self, our self-worth, our self-confidence, knowing that we did it once, you can do it again. And you can't constantly that they don't want to constantly teach people that, or have you understand that, because it impacts how they try to keep you in a box. So the confirmation. So when I was working on this series, one thing I wanted to make sure I highlighted those who, Black Americans, African Americans who did work here, but also I wanted to take it further. I was already working on that, and then this morning in our infamous group chat and the conversation that me and some of my brothers, my friends, and my family that we have, it just popped up this morning, and I want to play the clip of just exactly what was said, and it just again confirmed what I was already working on, what I was already thinking. And shout out to Deuce, my boy Fred White, for sending me that information. It popped up there. So let me play a clip of Nuri Muhammad. I love this brother. I'm going to do some more. I'm going to talk about him some more also. But look, let me play a clip of what he had to say. And it's about Black History Month. Um, I agree with a lot of what he says. I still think you can't. There's nothing that you could tell me for me to believe that Black History Month isn't essential and necessary. But he makes a great point, and we have to keep the essence of Black History Month, but take it further. Not diminish Black History Month, but make it bigger than what we have it right now. So I'm gonna play this clip, and then we're gonna talk about our spotlight for today for Black History Month.
Need to know that where black came from and what black is, because black's not a color, it's the essence from which all color comes from. So teaches the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Even if you took a paint set and mixed them all together, all the colors, it'll turn black, because it's the essence from which all color comes from. Black is original. So Bible says from one blood came all living beings, from one blood. Well, what blood could produce all? In the Mendelian law, he said this. He said, you can get recessive from dominant, but you cannot get dominant from recessive. Look at what he said was dominant. He said, brown skin, brown eyes is dominant. White skin, blue eyes, recessive. Black skin, brown eyes, dominant. So if you can get recessive from dominant, but not dominant from recessive, you can get white and all the other colors if black was first. But if white was first, you never would have the rest of these colors. So we are the original people on the planet, and we've been subliminally programmed to hate everything black. Do you know in the dictionary right now, there's 120 definitions for black, and almost all of them are negative. And there's 134 definitions for white, and almost all of them are positive. Think about it. Stock market crashed, it was called Black Monday. Somebody framed somebody, you blackmailed them, right? Whenever you tell a small lie, it's a little white lie, but a big lie is a black lie. You having bad luck, you're behind the 8 ball. What color is it? It's black. And now, on the pool table, the white ball puts all the other balls into place. And if you play a game where you put money into it, the cue ball will come back, but none of the other balls will come back if you scratch. Why? Because the white ball is bigger than all the other balls on the table. The green felt is a symbol of the planet. And these are all the different nationalities. Subliminal programming that we put everybody in their place. We run everything. And you lose the game if you don't make that black ball go in last. That's last. Programming. Even in baked goods. Angel food cake is white cake with white icing, but devil food cake, chocolate cake with chocolate icing. So these are subtle, subliminal messages that program us to think negative about our own black self. So the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, when he was teaching us and the minister, he has to lift us back up by feeding us not black hyperbole, but black facts to lift us. And there's a teacher that is considered one of the fathers of Western education. His name is Robert Collier. When education was going public, listen to what he said. He said that, remember, education is only 1/4 information. The other 3/4 is encouragement. And nothing encourages a child like teaching them about someone that looked like them that accomplished great feats in the past. So we've been through school. Black and white children start school the same way. They hold on to their mother's leg, get peeled off, have to cry, real timid, head down, moving slow. But notice that as both of them matriculate through 12 years of the public school system, I said it right, they going through, but look at what they're learning about. Black and white child are birth learning about white greatness. They learned about George Washington, a white man, Thomas Jefferson, a white man, Einstein, a white man, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Thales, Hypothetical, all these are white men. So that white child is learning about people that look like them that accomplished great feats in the past. So after 12 years, he walks out of school with his back straight, chest out, head held high, ready to conquer the world. But the little brother didn't learn about nobody that looked like him that accomplished great feats in the past. So when he walks out, he started with his head down. Now he leaves 12 years later with his head and his pants down because he never learned about people that look like him. So knowledge of self, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said is essential to learn. And knowledge of self produces love for self. And when you love yourself, you start doing for yourself. And if I know myself and I love myself and I'm doing for myself and you, my brother, my other self, then I'm going to treat my other self the same way. Guess what happens? All crime, all violence, all mistreatment, envy, jealousy, all the stuff that's plaguing our community, it disappears from knowledge of self and love of self.
What's your thoughts about Black History Month?
Well, it's a pretty little cheap pacifier that they've stuck in our mouth.
You agree with it or disagree with it?
I disagree with it in the sense of this. Here we are, the people with the longest history of anybody on the planet. Yet when it's time to remember us, we get the shortest month of the year. Think about that for a second. And notice that Black History Month in the educational system is never before slavery. It's always from the plantation to the present or the cotton field to the current. You never learned about Imhotep or Mansa Musa or the Nile Valley civilization or Timbuktu or the lost city of Atlantis. We don't learn anything about what we were before we were kidnapped and brought to America and westernized and Caucasianized. We don't learn about what we used to be before we were brought here. We learned about the accomplishments of a slave under the slave master, or about a freedom fighter or a revolutionary who either was killed or their movement was broke. So guess what happens to the mind if all we know about is plantation to the present? What happens is if we look back and we see us as slaves living in mud huts, working from can't see morning, can't see night for free, dressed in burlap, then we start getting a little apartment, $10 an hour, couple jackets, and think we didn't really came somewhere. Next thing you know, we start talking about we started from the bottom, now we here. But if we could really learn about ourselves, we would say we started from the top, and now we way down here.
That is really powerful. Everything that he said, and like I mentioned before, I don't have, for me to really appreciate somebody, respect somebody, and to be, on the same team with somebody, I don't always have to agree with 100% of what you say. I agree with 98, 97% of what he said, and that's the most important part of it. He was really he hit he tugged at the heartstrings of me. I sit here, listen to it, was brought to tears, just hearing him talk about what we used to be and what we can be again. And that's just not what we're taught. We're bigger than slavery, than former slaves. And again, not to disrespect that, because that was a hard fight, a tough climb to get to where we are right now. But we're so much more than that. We're bigger than that, and we need to understand that. So for me to get into that conversation, I really had to start here. This is where we start when we start to talk about who we were and what we used to be and who we can be. What is our potential? It's limitless. It's limitless. And today we're going to talk about Mansa Musa. We're going to talk about Mansa Musa. He is universally considered, not even considered. It is accepted that he was the richest person in history. He was so wealthy and the country was so wealthy, they can't really quantify that in today's dollars. You know how people will say that, okay, it was $500,000 in 1980, that's worth like $2 million now with inflation. Like they can't do that with Mansa Musa and the Mali Empire. It was so far out there, and they can't even quantify that and make people really understand in today's terms how truly wealthy and powerful they were. Um, Mansa Musa, he was an African emperor in the 1300s, and this just challenges everything that we're taught about our history, wealth, power, and it's another conversation. It's a conversation for another day as to what happened after that and how certain events took place. But let's talk about who Mansa Musa actually was, because I know some people know him. Some people hear the name, they know him. But let's just give a little context behind the name and behind the wealth. So his real name. Oh, sorry. Let me go back. I got a little bit ahead of myself. Real name Musa One of Mali. Mansa means it's the equivalent of emperor. If you look at different countries, different cultures, different time periods, they have the different names for what their emperor, king, or leader means. But Mansa was the equivalent of emperor. He ruled the Mali Empire. He started around 1312 is when he started, leading the Mali Empire. It covered different parts of what we now, if you look at it right now, if you look at Western Africa, it covered, and this touches me too, because I just left there. And I'm going, if you get tired of me mentioning that or referencing my pilgrimage back to Africa, I'll no, I know I'm not apologizing. You need to self-reflect. But his empire covered parts of what's now Mali, Senegal, Niger, Gambia, Guinea, and Mauritania. So it was one of the largest empires in the world at that time, because during that time period, when people start, you would conquer what's around you, but and a lot of times you wouldn't venture out too far. But that was one of the largest um, empires in the world at that time. So, and this is one of the questions I ask too. Is it's like that I ask, and I've heard people ask, is like, how did he become the richest man in history? So let's talk about that. So, my, and again, some of it is complicated. It is a little complicated. Excuse me. And but when you talk about, think about it. It's the 1300s. You didn't have cryptocurrency. You didn't have all the different ways to become wealthy. And to this day, and how Mali became that wealthy, they controlled the major global gold supply. This was the 1300s. The gold supply was important before that. It's been important after that, and I don't think it's going to ever go anywhere. But also, you can't just do. But how do you get that gold though? They also control the salt trade routes. Um, at the top. So when you have, because a lot of times with Asia and with spices, with rice and things, whatever supply and demand, whatever things were really important at the time, but you turn those things into it. So it ultimately comes back to gold, though. Their wealth came from, like you said, it was the gold, the trade routes, natural resources, which Africa has, even to this day, an overabundance of natural resources. And they weren't just rich and hoarding everything. He controlled economic systems. And when you say economic systems, it's the way that okay, this is the rice, this is the salt, this is the things that we have to trade, but what is it worth? What do you do with it? So he was also important and instrumental in setting up everything that came with the trade, the gold, and how you came about that. And then once, of course, that happens, and you do that for a while, and then came the journey that changed everything. See, the pilgrimage that shook the world, and this happened in 1324, 23, 24, 1324, I think. Um, Pilgrimage to Mecca. And he took I think he took a caravan report. He took 60,000, 55, 60,000 people with him. And he took, yeah, okay, yeah, 60,000 people. And he took, camels. And of course, he did not go anywhere without that gold. Did not go anywhere without that gold. But he gave away gold in cities like Cairo and places along the way on his travels to the Mecca. So, but so giving away gold. So we're gonna talk about and giving away currency. Whatever that currency is, it's dollars, it's crypto, like we mentioned, anything that's currency. If you give away too much of it, just think about stimulus packages. It caused inflation and it lowered gold's value. He had so much of it, and and that's the thing, that a part of it, he wasn't selfish with it. He was giving it away. And I think for him, just with my brain thinking about it right now, because when you have so much of something, for him, I don't think it had to, because in order to give it away, it, not that he didn't wasn't being altruistic, it wasn't important to give it away, but it just, once you have so much of it for so long, it kind of loses its value to you as a, it was like you're sitting there looking at it every day and you have piles of it. It just doesn't mean the same thing to you anymore. And that's like economy changing wealth. And that trip did something a little bit bigger than that. So at any time you have, especially when you have economies being affected and impacted, you know that there's other ripple effects that come with that. Oh, sorry. Oh yeah. Sorry. Losing my notes. It put Africa. Hold on. Yeah. It put Africa on the map. Before this, Mali, it, I guess with a lot of, at the time, in reading and seeing, like, it just widely, it wasn't widely known globally, because it wasn't the northern part of Africa. Um, it's Western Africa, but it's a little further inland. After this pilgrimage, though, um, Mali started to appear on world maps, because that's why, a lot of times, like, people were in their own bubbles at the time. They didn't, they only traveled so far. They only sailed so far. They could only go so far on land. And if you didn't see it, it wasn't documented and charted. You just didn't know. European and Middle Eastern scholars, they documented him and how this is how we know a lot about, sadly, because some of our direct history and recordings of it, not, and when I say recordings, I mean writing and just documentation of it, has been lost. So a lot of what we know of Mansa Musa comes from European and Middle Eastern, Asian scholars who documented that. And this was proof that Africa, and this is important to me. This is like, I really stand up for this, because when you hear about civilizations and when you hear about infrastructure, when you hear about democracy, when you hear about just a lot of things that are what we look at right now and it's normal to us. You talk about people talk about Rome, the Roman Empire. They talk about Greece. They talk about just everybody else. They'll go all over the place, but they don't talk about Africa. But this was proof that Africa had that structure, had that wealth, and it had that influence at a time. And again, we're talking about the 1300s. We're talking about the 1300s. And not only did he build wealth, he also built knowledge. And that's really important. That's a really important part of this story. And this is where we're getting into, as you can see, Timbuktu, the center of that knowledge, where he put a heavy and look at this. And this is it was 1300s is true. It was true in the 14, 15, 16, and I could keep counting. It's true in every time period, every century, investing in education. And you can look at just in a microcosm, look at it in a vacuum in the United States. You can see where people are more educated. And when I say educated, it doesn't just mean going to four-year universities, getting a doc, like not just that, but educated also means having being qualified, having certifications, learning trades, like all of that means being educated because you can't learn those and do those things if you're not skilled and educated and become certified to do it. So this Timbuktu in the center of knowledge was really important with his investment in education. He built mosques, he built schools, he built libraries. It became Timbuktu became the global learning center. And again, whenever you hear anybody speak about that, you always just think Greece, Rome, places like that. You never hear about never, not never, but you mostly don't hear about Timbuktu. But it was the global learning center, and that's where they were really, and again, math, astronomy, law, theology. Because in the 1300s, you had people studying. I know the math makes sense, the law makes sense, theology makes sense. But even the astronomy part, you're talking about the 1300s. They didn't have the technology and the things that we have now as far as Hubble, James Webb to be able to look. But a lot of what we talk about right now is based on things they were looking at and documenting and putting into place back then. So, and I'll say black excellence goes back a long way. It goes back a long way. And that when you talk about that, that's leadership beyond money because I know it's real and I did it. It's real easy to when you talk about Mansa Musa, you talk about Mali and his empire is to focus on the money, but also the focus is on what did he do with that money and what did he try to do with the money. He was giving it away. He was for the people. He was for education. That's what he was for. Structure. He was creating these systems, and that's important for us to know and to understand. I can't stress this enough. I'm both getting excited and sad at the same time every time I go over this. Every time I was doing research and reading it, it made me cry. It was like, why we can this is in us to do. And I don't want anybody who's not like to take this the wrong way. Like when we talk about this is about improvement and being our best selves. It's not about us being better than you or like I want to take over. Let's like just be the best that we can be. And I want us to maximize who we are and what we can be. And I'm sorry for that. No, I'm not. I'm not sorry for that. So leadership and legacy. Let's talk about as we wrap this up. Um, in the grand scheme of things, Mansa Musa he ruled for 25 years, and if you know anything about history, I love history. Even the greatest of rulers the ones that people either loved or feared and respected, 25 years is a long time to be in place, to be leader, to be a leader, and to have the type of legacy that he had. He built, as we talked about, he built cities, he established trade, education systems. He understood that power equals influence, equals knowledge, equals structure. And again, I'm like reading into this and I'm looking at my notes that I have, the things that like and I get so excited again, and I get so because he understood it, and that empire lasted a long time after his reign. He established a legacy. It wasn't just him, and that's how you know it was real. Because if it's just there while a person is there, while a few people are there, then it's not real. It's them. He established a system, and now as I talk about that, we talk about why, and this gets to our closeout. Why is this still important today? Why does his story and why does what happened in that time period still matter today? It challenges a lot of false narratives about Africa, about African Americans, about other civilizations that have been placed in certain pedestals. And when you talk about certain things, they're the example of it. They're not the only ones. And in a lot of cases, in this particular case, they weren't the greatest one. So it challenges. And if you teach people today who look like and come from those different cultures, and if you're not letting one group of people know how great they used to be, you're not letting them tap into something that's really important, which everyone else or a lot of other people get to tap into. It shows the history of black wealth, of education, of leadership, and just reclaiming that historical truth. And these are facts. This isn't some made up fairy tale story. These are stories as told to us, not even coming from within the continent. It's coming from other people. So, man, that's legacy, that's power, and that's for the culture. This is our Black History Month series. I got to get out of here because my voice is shaking up. I'm getting emotional, but man, thank y'all for being here with me. I'll talk to y'all later.